on a paper that he wrote, Professor Offenberger's class in the history of the Holocaust. The title is Choiceless Choices. All right, so thank you very much.
All right, thank you. So, I'm Joe, and I took this class on the Holocaust with Professor O. And when we learned about the Holocaust, or at least when I learned in high school, I learned a lot about the villains, learned about Hitler, I learned about the Nazis. But in this paper that I wrote, I wanted to focus on a group of people that we don't usually talk about. And these are the heroes. And they, in many cases, the heroes had to make what I call a choiceless choice. And that is this. When there's a choice where it doesn't matter which choice you make, it's going to be a bad outcome. You don't have any choices presented to you that have good outcomes, and you have to choose one. And some of the people that I'm going to talk about, they made a choice that they thought was the good choice, the best choice at the time, that actually ended up costing many more lives than were necessary. But it's very hard for us to sit here and judge those people who made these choices, because we're sitting here decades later. We know all the facts. They did not. So the first person that I'd like to show, this is a villain. This is Reinhard Heydrich. He was a famous Nazi leader in Germany. And when the Germans took over the Czech people, there were a few Czech rebels who they saw their opportunity, and they decided to assassinate this leader. And they thought, it's good, he's a Nazi leader who's killing their entire people, subjugating a lot of people, and to kill him would be a good idea. And what it ended up leading to is entire Czech villages being massacred that otherwise would have survived. And after this, there weren't many more Nazi assassinations, but this is one example of a choiceless choice in which they did not know the harm that their choice to kill this leader would make, but they chose to do it. And the next person that I'd like to talk about is Jan Carter. This is a hero. He was not Jewish. It would have been very easy for him to just go about his life. He had no obligation to the Jewish people or any of the people who were subjugated. And instead, he, through the Jewish underground, he was smuggled into the Warsaw Ghetto. And in the Warsaw Ghetto, he recorded what he saw. And he went in twice, talked to the Jewish people, and reported back to pretty much world authorities. He reported to Anthony Eden, who was the American foreign minister, and he also even got an audience with the President of the United States, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and he told them the truth. He said, this is what's going on in the Warsaw Ghetto, and basically the Jewish people have told me to tell you that our entire group is going to be destroyed if you do not do anything. And unfortunately, as we know, many of his warnings were completely unheeded, and he was overall ignored. This next hero was also in the Warsaw Ghetto, and he was Mordecai Anielewicz, and he was in what's called the Jewish Fighting Organization. And in the Warsaw Ghetto, the Jewish people were stripped of their property, of their weapons. They didn't have much of a fighting chance, but he led an event called the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, in which the members of the Jewish people in the Warsaw Ghetto, they revolted against the Nazis. not many people learn about this, but the Jewish people did not entirely, sometimes they fought back. And this is one of those times in which they fought back against their Nazi leaders. And without guns, they often had to use Molotov cocktails. They had to put together whatever they could. They had to be very resourceful. They had to smuggle whatever primitive weaponry that they could into the ghetto. And Mordecai was killed during this, but he was killed fighting for his people. And that is very courageous. The next person actually ended up becoming a United States president, but during the war, he was not yet a politician. He was just a military general. And when the United States liberated the concentration camps and death camps, what they found, even though they'd heard from Jan Karski, even though they knew somewhat about the devastation, nobody was prepared to see what they saw. The piles of bodies everywhere, just some of the worst sights in human history. And instead of, just liberating the ghettos and just calling it a day, they decided, and he pretty much had Holocaust deniers in mind even before they existed. He decided he was going to take pictures. He was going to make the perpetrators pose in these pictures. And he is one of them. They're much worse pictures. They're pictures of piles of bodies many times larger than this, but this is one of them. And Dwight Eisenhower, he knew, or it seems like he knew exactly who was going to come in the next decades, the Holocaust deniers. So now we're done talking about heroes. We're going to talk about some deniers. And this is where some of these people are going to be a little silly. These are going to be people that you might know. I think you will know. But brace yourself. Yes, this is Grammy Award-winning rapper, presidential candidate.
Oh boy.
This is Kanye West. So he made a series of comments. Well, in his life, he's made a series of comments, but he talked about the Jewish people and the Nazis in ways that just 10 years ago would have been unthinkable. Well, obviously, there's this picture that has his face, but here, this man in a ski mask, whose face is completely covered, is actually Kanye West. And he was on InfoWars. He was on the Alex Jones show. He sat down with Alex Jones for 3 hours. And they said some very, very silly things in those 3 hours. But at one point, and a lot of Holocaust deniers, they use ambiguity as their tool. They won't outright say that they deny the Holocaust or that they're fans of Adolf Hitler, but they will, they'll come close, and they'll be slick. They'll come as close as they can without giving any evidence to the other side as to who they are. Not Kanye. No, he actually said the words, "I actually like Adolf Hitler." There's no ambiguity there. We're not trying to think about, what context did it. No, there's video of him saying, "I actually like Adolf Hitler," which just 10 years ago, nobody would have said that in public. But here we are in 2023, and this happened. It happened in 2022, but this is happening. So the next person is actually Nick Cannon. Not many people know about this. He did later apologize, but he wrote a few tweets on Twitter that didn't go quite as far or even close to as far as Kanye West. But he justified some of the anti-Jewish things that he was saying in a tweet where he said, it's never hate speech. You can't be anti-Semitic when we are the Semitic people. We are who they want to be. This is our birthright. We are the true Hebrews. So his argument, or his justification, was that he, as a black man, is a Hebrew person, and that the Jewish people are not Hebrew people. So his justification was a lie. And he eventually apologized on Twitter for his remarks, and there was quite a considerable group on Twitter that was not mad at him for saying the things that he said, but for apologizing for them. A large group, and that's pretty disturbing. And so I use these two examples. Nick Cannon has apologized. There is some olive branch of forgiveness for him for having apologized. But Kanye West, we'll go back to him. Obviously, he's wearing a ski mask. Not many people take somebody serious when they're wearing a ski mask. But the next Kanye West might not be wearing a ski mask. They might be wearing a suit and tie. They might at least appear as a serious person. They might be more slick with how they speak. And they could get themselves into a position of power. And so part of history, and I'm pretty sure many people have heard this before, part of history is learning from the past to prevent it from ever repeating. And this is one event in which clearly Kanye West didn't learn about those heroes from the Holocaust. He never saw those pictures. It didn't seem like he did. And he hasn't learned. And so, in the end of my essay, I finished with this sentence. And it was a warning. It's kind of a challenge. And it was this: let's not ignore the next Jan Karski.
Very good.